Mom, where's my passport?
Welcome to I Am Not Your Tour Guide, but I am your host, Starla Skelton. This is a podcast where travelers become storytellers. And as we listen, maybe we can gain a little perspective that will help us or inspire us on our future adventures. So, today's podcast is something that I've been excited about since before I even started this podcast, because I made this list of 100 people that I knew that I would want to interview if I started this podcast. And this person, I don't want to fluff up his ego too much because that would just be bad for him. So I'm going to let him know he was in my top 3. Okay, I'm not going to say which one. He was in my top 3 people I wanted to interview. So I want to introduce you. Some of you already know him, and it is Mr. Rob De Clerk. Hello, Rob.
Hello, Ms. Skelton. How are you?
I'm great. I am excited, actually, because you and we worked together at Front Page News. It seems like 100 years ago, but we worked together for a long time. And as I was getting the questions together that I wanted to ask you, I started thinking to myself, man, all our experiences that you and I have together, 80% of them are work related. Whenever we were at work, we were just talking about, oh my God, I hate people who ask for strong islands or for light ice or, something along those lines. But we never really got to dive into a lot of depth of travel. And you have had so much of it. I almost feel bad that I don't know a lot of this stuff about you. So thank you for still being my friend.
Well, we did we were misanthropic together. You less so than me. But I loved it. I love, now that you mention it, bartending, the reason I loved bartending is the reason I love traveling is the people, the good people. The crappy people you'll forget about, and that's fine. But the cool people you meet while you're bartending, it's the same traveling, and that's the best part of both of them. That's the reason why someone like me who's so, I think surly was probably the most common epithet hurled my way.
That's a nice word you just gave yourself.
I think, despite that, I think that's why I enjoy it. I mean, I love bartending. It was fun for that reason. And same thing for the traveling. It's always about the people.
Yeah, and that's a great analogy. I've never thought about that. Maybe that's why you and I made it in the bartending world as long as we did. But to kind of start this interview and get things going, I was thinking about your childhood, and I would like to know a little bit more about that. And I was going to ask you, do you have memories of traveling with your family whenever you were a child? Do you have some vivid memories?
Yeah, I mean, my folks got divorced when I was young-ish. And between my mom and my dad, we did, we traveled. South Africa is a big country, probably bigger than most people would think. And there was a lot going on in, the 1970s when I was young. We, my uncle used to run a private game reserve. So, I've driven with elephants and seen lions and what have you since I was a young kid, which to me was always sort of second nature. And I've been really lucky to see. I mean, I still love it. Every time I go back to South Africa, I go walk in the bush, as often as you can, hippos and rhinos and stuff. I love it. I mean, my mom still does too, and James and I. So my brother is 18 months older than I am, and he's got a son the same age as my stepson. So we're taking them to South Africa next year because they'll both be 12, and they'll be perfect age just to take them into the bush and go looking for leopards and lions and elephants and things that I grew up doing. That I still love. I mean, it's the best, not the super fancy safari where we go out and it's out of Africa and stuff, but just renting a minivan and driving through a national game park. Doing a lot of that.
Sounds amazing.
I mean, to me, it's still the best ever. I'm a tourist in South Africa when I go back, when I do that sort of thing. And then, we started flying around the country when I was very young. We moved, I was there till I was about 9, moved to the States when I was 10. So I've been traveling I'd lived in 10 countries by the time I turned 11. I mean, not 10 countries, sorry, 4 by the time I turned 11. So for me, I'm not really from anywhere as such. There wasn't a place where I spent more than half a dozen years in my formative years. So all my life has been traveling around a bit. And it's not just, obviously Africa informs a bit of that, but it's just, I never really lived, we were in South Africa, we lived in England for a minute, we lived in Canada for a year, we lived in my folks and, first moved to Maryland, but then I went to boarding school in DC. And then I went to college and then Atlanta. I think Atlanta is probably still the longest I've ever lived anywhere.
Really?
But yeah, I've never really sort of settled down long enough to be from anywhere as such. So I guess traveling has kind of always been part of my life.
Was it hard for you to kind of settle down in Atlanta, considering it's such a stark contrast to South Africa?
Well, I mean, not really. I'd lived in rural Maryland, in farm country. We used to go get shotguns and go shooting geese and stuff, I have driven in a cherry red Corvette, Camaro, throwing pony bottles of Coors Light at a stop sign on a back road somewhere before. So, it wasn't like it was my first experience in the States. And then, I mean, I think much like you, we both worked and we had our summers off, and that was or we had as much time as we wanted off. And that was the escape behind bartending is, I moved there after college. I had nothing better to do. So I moved there to see the Olympics. My brother was helping set up the Olympics. So I went to go watch the Olympics. I'm a sports geek. So I used to be able to go down and see everything all the time. And then worked there for a bit, started my MBA, but then I got to travel, every year or two, I'd take 2-3 months off and go and travel. And, you see a bit of South America, or you see a bit of the Middle East, or you see a bit of, go back to South Africa, something like that. So it was a bit of a means to an end. And I loved the people, I got married last year and there were people at my wedding that I met that first year I was in Atlanta. So,
oh, wow.
It was the people. And that was the reason I stayed. And then, however many years later, I was like, why am I still here? Other than the people. But, no, it was, there was, hey, I'm going to go to business school. I'm going to, make $1 zillion and what have you. But I got to just travel every year. The summer breaks or one point, when was it? 2000, I guess. I started saving up for like a year and a half, and I traveled around the world for a year and a half. And then I came back, and so it was kind of a means to an end. It was sort of fulfilling my travel craving, and much to my family's chagrin, I just worked and traveled for 15 years, 14 years or something. It was a long time.
Do you feel like since you have had that experience and saved up and traveled and you've been all over the world, well, how many countries have you been to now? Do you even know?
I was trying to count the other day. It's 56 or 57-ish.
Yeah.
It depends if we're counting the Palestinian territories or... Are we counting that day in Jericho or a night drinking in Madrid? I didn't really go and see much of Spain, but I have spent a night drinking in Madrid. So yeah, in that 56, 57-ish.
Yeah, no, that's an amazing number. And so of all these places that you've traveled, I'm sure some people have never even heard of some of the countries and cities that you've been to, but is there a trip that you have taken that stands out as being transformative to your life?
No. I mean, you know me.
Yep.
I'm a huge softie and super sentimental. So I'm not soft or sentimental. So it's not really like that. It's not. And because I've been doing it all my life. So each new trip was just another. It was never going out and doing my eat, pray, love moment or whatever it was, It's never, I went
I've had
somewhere
so many
to,
of those.
Yeah. I never went somewhere to find myself or find something. It was just, I've been doing this all my life. I love doing it. and this is next. And it was pretty random. It was just like, hey, I want to go somewhere. You know, I spent 1 year saving up the whole time, and I was going to go to Iceland in the summer. And then I started doing all the numbers. I'm like, shit, this is going to be really expensive. And then I think on the Thursday before the Tuesday I was going to leave, I changed my mind and I went to the Middle East. So I did like Jordan and Syria and Lebanon and Israel and a bit of the Sinai on like 6 days' notice. And it was great. It was one of the best trips of my entire life because it was half the price of Iceland.
6 days' notice?
Oh, it was half the price of Iceland. I was cheap. A lot of the places I've traveled in my life have been because they're cheap. Let's get that out of the way. I'm not super intrepid. I am basically poor. So, you know, you go and you spend... What does it cost to spend a month in Europe these days, as opposed to a month in Africa or Southeast Asia or Latin America or something? But yeah, as far as the biggest overall impact, it would probably be that long trip I did, I don't know, 13, 14-ish countries. Started in South Africa, traveled up the coast of Africa to Cairo, crossed India, Nepal, Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand, a couple islands in the Pacific. And I did that for about a year and a half. And that was fun. And then I was out of the country in 9/11, so I don't know, you know, everyone has this giant sort of memory of etched in their mind, I'm sure, of the morning of 9/11. I was on a beach on the Barrier Reef, and people were like shaking me up because I was the only sort of American person there saying, Rob, what's going on? And we went out and we sat and we watched CNN. Every channel in Australia had a live feed of CNN. And we just watched them, you know, over and over again. And my mom, one of her partners in her law firm, died on that plane that left out of D.C. And she was flying on the same flight the next day to a conference they were both going to in San Francisco. And then my brother was up in New York, and he was always flying around at the time. So I was terrified, and I was trying to call my family for... Hotmail was down. We couldn't do emails for a couple of days. And we couldn't call for, I don't know, a week or something. So, I mean, I was pretty distraught about that. But that whole trip, it was more about just dodgy little places in Mozambique. And I stayed in a place with no running water and no electricity and a Seventh-day Adventist school on the coast in Kenya. And,
oh, wow.
You know, just the Cairo, just the madness that is Cairo, like the back streets of Cairo. And we got chased around the pyramids in Giza on camelback by the Egyptian police. Apparently, you're supposed to pay to get in there. Who knew? Yeah, I was traveling with. I don't know if you ever met him. Did you? I don't know if you ever met Kevin, who I used to bartend with. I traveled with him for a few months, and we left the Egyptian Museum in Cairo and found a cabbie who was like, "Hey, my cousin Ahmed has camels. You want to come see the pyramids or what have you?" And we took a taxi in Cairo, which is still the scariest thing I've ever done traveling.
Really?
Yes. Worse than
like scarier
taxis
than
in India? Yes. And worse than motorcycle taxis in Bangkok. I don't know if you've taken those. Where you have to you've got your knees out beside their butt, but when you go between two buses, you have to slide back and move your knees in so you don't catch the buses on the way through.
Yes.
Yes, and then taxis in Guatemala City, that was always interesting too. But no, Cairo, still the worst for taxis or trying not to die. But yeah, we went out into Giza, which is basically just a suburb. I mean, it's like, College Park is to Atlanta. You just take a taxi there and you drive through some back roads, and Cousin Ahmed has some very unhealthy looking camels and a mule or something. And I think I took a camel and Kevin took a mule or a donkey or whatever it was. We trotted out south of, the national park, and the pyramids comes in, the front entrance, and there's a giant Hilton and a golf course and bells and whistles and Egyptian Disneyland or whatever it was they built there. Or you just ride out into the desert and come back through the Sahara and around the Sphinx and what have you. And at some point, some cops saw us. I don't remember if I think they were on horses. And they chased us, and we were riding away, and I don't know if you've ever ridden a camel, but it's not a saddle. It's like it's like an A-frame of wood that sits right under your crotch. So as the camel goes up and down and repeatedly bruising your crotch. And here I'm trying to run away from the cops. They're chasing us, and they were on better camels than we were. We were on ghetto camels, and our camels were pretty slow. And eventually they caught us and threatened to beat us, and Ahmed had to bribe them, and they just wandered off, and we kept running, walking down to the Sphinx. And then some cops on foot tried to chase us, but we outran them. They were quick enough, but
sounds amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the places I went on that trip were always, India on a budget is something else. Like, it's not for the faint of heart. It's not a first-timer's trip going to India on a tight budget. Indian trains are just its own animal. Delhi, Mumbai, you can go to Dharamsala and see, like, where the Dalai Lama lives and his temple and the Tibetan government in exile. And, there's all the pretty things. But then the nitty-gritty of India on a budget it's work. I think people always ask me, like, did you like India? And I say, I didn't enjoy it, but I learned a lot.
Okay.
It wasn't fun, but it was a very educational experience. And I'd love to go back and do it first.
If you go back, do you think you'll go on? If you go back, do you think you'll go on a budget, or do you think you'll plan it to where it's a little bit more, you're spending a little bit of money?
Well, yeah. I mean, when you're traveling for 16 months or something, you're on a budget every day. So, yeah. I mean, I stayed at places that were like 90 cents a night, $1.50 a night to stay, things like that. So, now, I'm old. And I have a 401k and what have you. You can actually afford to go and do it now. My traveling now is a bit different, but it was that long trip and being on such a tight budget forced you to do a lot of sort of skimping on things. And that part was cool. I mean, you learn to love places like that where people are like, oh, that's gross, that's dirty or something. I mean, Cairo is just insane. It's just a nightmare. It's, I don't know, 30 million people all crammed up into 3 square feet of land or something. It's not, but it's just so hectic, and I just learned to love it. I mean, it was the first week I was like, what the hell is wrong with this city? I mean, when you're crossing the street, it's like Frogger, there's 17 lanes of traffic. Not kidding. I mean, well, there's like 10 official lanes, but there's like 17 actual lanes of traffic. And you like go between and you stop, and there's cars coming on both sides of you, and you go and you stop, and the same thing. And I learned that you find a little old lady and you go down traffic from her, because no one's going to hit the little old lady. So you follow her across 3 lanes, and then you stop in 1 lane, and then you stop. But then after that, you go into the markets, and I mean, I don't speak any Arabic, and I don't read Arabic. You can teach yourself how to count in Arabic in an hour or two. It's not that hard. But you go into little restaurants and you point at things and you talk to people. And, one of the cool things about traveling is like I said, all of the people. And there's always someone willing to help you. I mean, you probably more so than me because, you're a woman, better looking than this. I generally
definitely
I start to tend to look homeless by about the 3rd week of my trip. But that's a double-edged sword. You also get taken for a local, which is fun sometimes.
I was about to ask you that because my brother said that whenever he travels, especially in the Middle East, for weeks, months on end, he said people just come right up to him and start speaking Arabic. Don't think twice about it. I'm sure you get the same.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's great. I still remember walking down the street in Beirut and a family in a Range Rover pulls up. Beirut's so weird. It's like Miami with all the plastic surgery and the fancy cars and all of the... It's such a strange place. But walking down the street in Beirut and just a Range Rover pulls up and then yada something casino. And I know where the casino is and I just faking it. I'm like, to the left. And I said the name of the street to turn on and I sent them on their way. So I've given people instructions in Arabic to find the casinos in Beirut. They were probably from the Gulf there, but, being hypocrites and what have you, as the Gulf Arabs normally do in Beirut. And then...
Tell me what you really think, Rob.
Honestly, if you've been to Lebanon, the Lebanese think that too. They get pissed off at the Palestinians because the Palestinians live there in refugee camps, and they have for 5 decades, 6 decades, and they start, the occasional war and shooting and what have you, And there's a quiet secret in the Middle East that a lot of the locals really don't enjoy having the Palestinians as guests on their land, especially in Jordan too. But then, a lot of the Arabs who have very strict laws, there are people that get arrested in Dubai for like making out on the beach or something. It's just crazy stuff. They get sent to jail. And then they all go to, all the time. There's rules against, public indecency in Dubai, which you think of as a giant, just lawless shopping mall, but it's actually very socially conservative. But then you go to Syria or Lebanon, and the Gulf guys will fly there, and they will gamble. Camel racing. I mean, I don't know if you've seen a lot of camel racing, but it's all the guys from the Gulf shipping their camels there. And then casinos and hookers. Hookers and blow. People go to Beirut for that all the time, and it's all the hypocrites from the Gulf. So
I'm assuming you didn't stay there as long as
I wasn't in Beirut
cities.
that long. I didn't love it. Like I said, it's a lot like Miami, which is not my jam. Interesting. I mean, you go to South Beirut, and South Beirut's been in a war zone since 1970. So there's just mortar holes in the buildings. There's like a 30, 40-story Holiday Inn that never got built because it got blown up. It's still there, the shell of it, right on the waterfront in Beirut. I did walk through South Beirut, and once again, looking more homeless than this was helpful. I wouldn't have recommended that you do it. And took a van into the Bekaa Valley to go to Baalbek, where like Hezbollah is from. So I mean, it was an interest. Like it wasn't the smartest thing I've ever done, but it was pretty cool to go out there and see something like that, something so different. It's it's not your average strip mall in Middle America. It's something just totally different, something that's worth traveling a long way for. So
yeah. As I'm listening to your stories earlier, when you said that you had a 401k, it just kind of sparked my thought process. And I'm like, you do have these stories that are not common. Like, I know there are a lot of people that have traveled like you, but the majority of people have not. Okay, that's safe. That's a safe bet to say. And so, do you ever, like, now you have a beautiful wife, you have a stepson, you live in Seattle, Washington, you have a life that I know you love. Like, I know you're incredibly happy, and that makes me super excited for you. But do you ever have moments where you're commuting to your job and you're sitting in traffic and you're like, man, like I miss those days of almost getting arrested via Camelback in Cairo? Or do you ever have, I don't want to say regrets, but just like this somewhat longing for the days of travel?
I mean, I think I'm lucky. I got to do it all when I was young, when it seemed like a good idea, when I was young and dumb and stupid, It was, and I mean, only one of us has spent, a week in a Chinese kitchen car getting to Tibet, so it wasn't like I'm the only idiot on this call. But I mean, you know how it is. You go and you do all the silly stuff when you're a kid, and you gamble and you do things that are not a good idea when you're young and dumb. And I've been to Pakistan, but I haven't been to Paris because fuck it, I can go to Paris anytime. I can go when I'm old. I can fly nonstop to Paris and spend the weekend there and turn it around. And, it's a place I'd take my wife and the boy, but, I don't want to take them to Pakistan or, take them to, take them to, no one's going to Syria right now. Or Bolivia or, not too many people wandering around Colombia at the moment, but.
No, that's a great segue into this next question I had for you. That do you have fears now that you didn't have whenever you were traveling in your 20s?
Not really. I never really did really stupid things. So I've never, I lied. So once, when we were going from Syria into Lebanon, we did smuggle car parts into Lebanon because there was no duties and stuff from Syria. And the cab driver, he was sort of using us as a smokescreen. Hey, I've got this American and these two Dutch guys, and they're absolutely not smuggling car parts underneath their seat or in their backpacks. I mean, we didn't get stopped and stuff. I mean, I didn't really know entirely about that till we started. But, I've never been like, hey, would you guys like to run drugs cross country? You'll be fine, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I never did things that would have got me caught because I don't want to end up in a foreign jail. Doesn't seem like a lot of fun. I haven't been to one. So I didn't really risk too much stupid stuff. I did young, drunken traveler stuff, but nothing nefarious or criminal. So I would probably still do that. And there are places I wouldn't take my family, obviously.
Yes.
But I've already been to most of those places. That was kind of my jam. Like I've been to a lot of the dodgy places that I want to go to, and there are more dodgy places, but they're not high on my list. I had a bunch of other things I want to see first. And none of those are sort of super crazy, unsafe type places.
So you don't have a travel experience that kind of pops in your mind where at the moment that you said to yourself, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this one?
No. There were ones where I'm like, well, shit, now what? But not, when you come from Syria and Beirut and you try to get into Israel, it's fun. You get the full strip search experience. And then they break into your emails and your social media and they start asking you fairly pointed questions that they wouldn't have known otherwise. And I did get interrogated by the Syrian intelligence when I was in Damascus, but that was more just...
Wait, for what? How did that come about?
Well, so the old city of Damascus, one of my favorite places in all the world. Like, I love Syria. People ask me what's your favorite place when you're traveling? And I say I don't really have one, I have two. I have Nepal, obviously, which you've been to, and it's amazing.
And it's my favorite place as well. Just want to point that out.
Yeah, I mean, the mountains, the people, like, go to Nepal if you do anything before you die. I promise you won't regret it. And then Syria, because just Syria is the oldest continuously inhabited settlement in the world or something like that. It's the oldest continually inhabited city in the world. And then you go out into the desert and there's Palmyra and, ISIS, I think, has destroyed the whole thing and fuck those guys. But, just the Crusader castles and the history and, part of it's desert, but the part along the coast is very fertile farmland. And, I grew up on a farm, so just the fruits and vegetables and the nuts and everything you see when you're walking the markets, like a Syrian market is just magical place. And I was walking, and Damascus, the old Damascus, is a little walled-in city. And the cool thing about Damascus is that they don't make maps because the streets are only 6 feet wide. It's hard to draw a map of where the streets are only 6 feet wide. So you just keep walking. And when you hit a wall, you turn left. And then you just keep walking because you're never going to get out of the wall. So you're never going to get lost. And I was doing that one day and I heard the BBC. And so I stopped and it was this random guy, sort of cross-eyed Syrian antiques dealer named Rami. And he was running his dad's shop. And he's like, I walked in and there was nothing in there and I was walking away and he ran outside. Hey, come in. And he flagged me down, told me to come in, got me tea, some sweets. And we talked about, Syria and stuff in general. And then for the next 3 nights I was in Damascus, I would go to a shop at night and we would sit and have tea and chat. And one of the days, a Syrian intelligence officer came in and asked for all my papers, and I got the full what have you and the paperwork and the what have you. We'll be in contact. Where are you staying? Blah, blah, blah. And when he left, Rami's like, I don't worry about it. He's like, they're worried about it. And this is kind of weird because this was 2010. The year before the war started in Syria. And he said they're looking for Islamists, like Islamic militants wandering. And, I look homeless and stuff, so I could have passed for an Islamist, I guess, or an English version of one. So they were looking the year before the war started, probably with good reason, for people who were sort of militant Islamists in studying in Damascus, so that they could catch them and, torture them and do whatever all the terrible things that the Syrian government does to people. But so, yeah, and then I don't think the Lebanese are too disorganized to have records on anyone. So I've got files with the Syrian secret police and the Israeli secret police at the same time. But I'm really relatively harmless, so...
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier that Nepal was your favorite place, and my brother Ryan and I, we share the same sentiment as you. And I would recommend Nepal to anyone. So is there a place, kind of off the top of your head, that you can think that you would not recommend to someone? Is there a place where you're like,
I met so many cool people on the road, and there were people. I met a Japanese girl, without sounding condescending, woman in their, early 20s and stuff when I was in Syria. Mm-hmm. And she had traveled through like Iran and Turkey and Syria by herself. Whereas like English is a second language. I was like, you are a hell of a lot cooler than me, lady. Well done you.
Yeah.
But, it's different for me, and, happily for me as a guy, I have to worry less. I don't have to worry about being in a parking lot or being in a hostel or being, roofied or something in a club or something like that. So it was. I
mean, I can see a ladyboy definitely roofing you in Bangkok. Let's be honest.
Ugh, Bangkok. You can have Bangkok.
Ping
by the
pong
way.
show.
I loved the islands in Thailand. I never went to Chiang Mai, but I loved the islands in Thailand. But you can have Bangkok. Oof. No, I think
different place right there.
Yeah, that's. I'm not a big one for the big fancy touristy party towns, I guess. I bartended for 20 years. I've had enough partying. I don't need to go somewhere abroad to do it. But I think places I wouldn't recommend, parts of Turkey, Bolivia was never that bad. Some of the streets in Buenos Aires probably wouldn't have been the best idea. I went to Colombia. I've been to Colombia twice, 3 times. I don't remember. I loved it. It's beautiful. I mean, I don't know if you've been there. Beautiful country.
I've never been to Colombia.
What?
It's so sad. So sad.
Beautiful country.
I
And
know.
the first time I went there was years and years ago, and there was still the war on and the cartels and stuff. So wandering the streets of Bogota at night, whatever it was, 15, 20 years ago, wasn't a very good idea. Nepal during the Civil War. I got tear gassed for the first time in Kathmandu.
Really? What year was that?
No idea. Oh, it was on my long trip. So it must have been 2000, 2001.
Okay.
We had gone to Pokhara, and we had done the Annapurna base camp.
Annapurna.
So I know. Have you done the circuit, or did you do the base camp?
So Ryan,
He did the full
friend
circuit.
Adam did.
Yeah.
Right. Ryan and Adam did. I went towards the Everest base camp trek.
Oh, that's right. So you can do the full circuit around all of the mountains, or you can go up through a canyon into the base camp in the middle. It's kind of the caldera of the Annapurna circuit. You get to the base camp there. And, we had done that, and that was amazing. It was one of my favorite places in the whole world, was the base camp at Annapurna. And then we overnighted. We broke down. I've pushed a bus up the Himalayas. That was not very fun. And we arrived a day or two late in Kathmandu. And we were taking a taxi to the hostel or the guest house. And the road was closed, so he went back out and around the ring road and back in, and that was closed. And he kept trying to do this till he found one, and he dropped us off. And we had been awake for 3 days, so we crashed. And when I woke up and went to, remember internet cafes, when you used to, like, 3 days later you would go and pay money to sit at an internet cafe?
Yeah, they're like my favorite travel memories, like searching for an internet cafe that was open, that was actually working. And then because sometimes you would go in there in a country and there'd be like 10 legit computers, the ones with backs on them, and maybe one of them was working. And so, there'd be quite the line, and you'd be like, I'll come back later. And then you come back later and it's closed. So
or
it's
they
like,
had dial-up, and it was like $10 a minute or something, and they had dial-up that you couldn't get on, and you're like, fuck this. And then you wait for 4 days to send a mass mail to all your friends and stuff from back in the day. I still remember print photography, for God's sakes. So there's
you're
all these old memories that come up from traveling. So we arrived in Kathmandu that morning. I went to the internet cafe to shoot people's email, and like, did you hear about the king? And that late the night before, early that morning, the crown prince of Nepal he'd walked into dinner, and he'd killed his father, the king, and the queen, and his sister, and he'd killed like 8 people in the royal palace while they were having dinner, I guess. And so the whole city, the whole country shut down. You couldn't fly in, you couldn't fly out. There were no buses. Like, there was nothing for a week. So there are worse places in the world to be stuck than Kathmandu. It's a fun little town, but the protesters started getting wind that the army had collaborating with his brother, and his brother hadn't killed him, the son had done it. But everyone thought the brother had instigated it because conveniently he was the only one who wasn't in the palace that night, and then he became the king. And anyway, there were riots in the streets, and there were tear gassing, and I met some German girl, and we were wandering down the street and following the protests, and we would get tear gassed. And even in the riots, the Nepalese people are literally the nicest people ever. You'd be wandering down the streets, and the cops would come, and they would tear gas you, and you'd run back a while, and they would sort of push forwards, and you'd run down a side alley, and there'd be like 5 or 6 other guys, and young guys who had shaved all their heads and left a top knot on it out of sign of respect to the king. Like, this wasn't anarchists or criminals or anything. This was young Nepalese men who were still mourning the death of the king, but were like, what gives? This is super shady. Obviously the brother was part of this, and the army was part of a coup or something. But they would grab me and the girl, and they would push us under a window, and someone on the 4th floor would shove a hose down, and you would hose out your eyes and stick onions in your nose. Apparently this is what you do when there's tear gas, stick onions in your nose and onions under your eyes. And they would always say, hey, you first.
Did it help?
Yeah, as much as, onions help against tear gas. I wouldn't recommend it. It wasn't that much fun, but even in a riot, they would always grab us first, because we obviously stood out in the crowd. I am not Nepalese, and I couldn't even pass a Nepalese, and she was German. So, but we were there, and they sort of viewed us as sympathetic. So they always told us to go first and get all the, they gave you milk and water and onions and blah, blah, blah. But even when you were getting tear gas, the Nepalese people are still the nicest people in the world. Go to Nepal. That's what I can keep saying about that.
Yeah, right. We're definitely pretty great spokespeople for Nepal. I hope they do go to Nepal. I actually keep in touch with one of the, whenever I was there, I didn't use a local guide, but I met one and became legit friends with this guy because, like you said, he was just interested in me, and he was interested in my life and what I was doing there. And he wasn't trying to sell me anything, but he just wanted to tell me about his wife and his family. And I only talked to him on and off for maybe like 2 and 3 days because I kept seeing him in different spots on the trail because we were doing the same trail. We just were going at different paces. He was amazing. I was not. I felt like I was taking 2 steps forward, and then, I would just kind of sink 3 steps back in some certain sandy spots. And it got to this one point where I saw him in one town, and we stayed at a tea house, and it was called the Hilton, Hillten. So I stayed in the Hilton in this little tea house. It was about $1.25 a night. And he said that I could stay there for free if I just ordered dinner from them. And I actually had to ask the owner if I could just unpack some of my luggage and keep it there. And he was like, yeah, you can just throw it under the counter. And I'm like, well, I probably won't be back for like a week, ish. To get it because my pack is too heavy. He's like, yeah, just throw it under the counter. He's like, it'll be there when you get back. And right there, even just with that little interaction I had, it showed me so much about their culture and their people in general. Like, how amazing is that first of all, you're going to just let me keep something there. But second of all, you just know it's going to be there because nobody's going to come in and take it. They're not trying to steal it. Like, I was like, this is pretty amazing.
Nepal is poor.
Yes.
And no one there, the low levels of crime, so when you spend a month traveling in India and everyone just wants you stand out in a crowd and everyone just, not everyone, but the people in the travel industry, everyone wants a piece of you. And it's hard. You get tired. And I've been harassed and hassled and what have you. You get off the ferry to Zanzibar. You land in anywhere in Latin America where obviously you stand out in a crowd. Things like that. The Egyptian Museum and everywhere in Cairo. India is like that times 100. Everywhere you go, everyone just wants a piece of you. They want something. They want money. Come visit my uncle's frickin' carpet shop. They intentionally poison people in Agra. This is a thing because it happened to Kevin when I was traveling with him. All the hotels in Agra where the Taj Mahal is, they have a reputation. Not all of them. We got lucky and managed to stay at one where the owner was the representative of the Agra Small Hotel Association. Unfortunately, it's true. He's like, that guy, we were sitting on his rooftop patio having dinner, watching the Taj Mahal. It was pretty sweet. And he's like, that guy, and that guy, and that guy. He said, they'll put some sort of thing in your food, poisoning or something, and you'll get vilely ill, and they'll know what it is, and they'll take you to a doctor, and the doctor will charge your medical insurance or your credit cards or what have you, and then they'll split it. And this is a commonly accepted practice in Agra. And it's kind of it happens a lot in India. And you're so tired. And a month of this, I'm exhausted. And we get into Nepal, and you get to that little, is it Sonali? I don't know. The little town where Buddha is from. It's on the Indian.
Yeah.
I think it's Sonali, the little Indian Nepalese border town.
I don't remember the name of it.
But you get there, and the first thing, you meet a couple young kids. And they're like, hey, what's up? What's up, Americans, whatever? And they're like, hey, you want some hashish? Everyone in Nepal grows and sells hash. And I'm like, nah, cool, thanks, man. I'm not going to take hash, around a third world country. And he's like, okay, that's cool, maybe later then. And then we ended up just playing pool with those guys for like 4 hours, waiting for our next bus to come on. And that was the first of just many, many nights when all the people were just so welcoming and nice and warm. And it's... And then, obviously, I think you found out you've never seen your mortality until you've seen a very, very small Nepalese woman go by you on a mountain carrying 50 chickens on her back at full speed. And you've just been like, you got your small little day pack. I mean, I remember we were going to the early parts of Annapurna, and this guy came, and they had some sort of wicker chicken thing. And he had he probably had 16 chickens on his back in a wicker contraption, and he just ran barefoot, ran us full speed, went right by us, and we were dying. And you've never seen. I mean, now you know. I know exactly why hell, I've been to Pakistan, and even the Pakistanis don't climb the mountains. Sherpas come from Nepal to climb the mountains. The Pakistanis just get you to the base camp. Because those Sherpas are something else. Whew.
They are amazing. I remember reading an article once about, I don't remember which part of royalty, at what decade this was, but whenever the Rolls Royce was a really big deal, the car. And I remember seeing pictures of 20 Nepalese Sherpas taking turns. So 10 at a time would carry this car up into the mountains, and they would take turns switching off with the other 10, and then they would rest. And I was like, it just blows my mind. They're not human.
Actually, I mean, I guess now that you talk, it's like the quechua in the Andes. There's very, very short and hunchbacked, and then just carry everything. The little old women in the big hats and colored shawls who could just carry 150 pounds up a mountain. A little slower speed, but anyway.
I know. But so listening to you spout out your stories that have happened all over the world, do you ever feel like you're a bit superior to other people because you've had these travel experiences that you've had? And I say that with a little bit of satire. When I say superior, I don't mean that you think you are just like the almighty, but do you ever find it hard to relate to people who haven't traveled like you?
I mean, not really. I mean, I think when we were working I don't remember who it was. Remember we were working in Front Page, and we met someone who was 25 and had never been on a plane before. And I mean, I can't really relate to that because I've been on planes since I was 5, and I've flown on, all of the continents except for the cold one. And I'll get there eventually, but I'm not too much interested in it just yet.
I can't wait. No, I'm making Trey go.
I think in the beginning when I was younger, so my first real travel was I took Russian in high school. I thought it would get me into a good college and I would become rich and famous and all that stuff. Actually, I thought I would go to Russia and open up Russia for international business after the fall of the Berlin Wall. Instead, I spent one semester in Russia and I learned that it's terrible and the mafia runs everything and it's just heavy and miserable and there's 200 and something countries around the world. There's a solid 150 I'd recommend you head to first, except for St. Petersburg, which is beautiful. So I had traveled to Russia and then hitchhiked through Eastern Europe right after the fall of the Berlin Wall. So it was pretty cool, you know. There weren't lots of tourists and it wasn't super expensive. And I spoke Russian, so I could still get around a bit in some of the countries where they didn't speak a lot of English. And I was 18 then. So maybe at that point you start thinking, hey, you know, I'm pretty bright and yada yada. But the more you travel and the older you get, one of the things I realized is that everywhere you go, there's someone so much cooler than you. Like there's some guy that's doing something so much cooler than anything you're doing anywhere you go. You know, I went to Turkey and I was working my way around Turkey and I met a guy from Switzerland who was riding his bicycle from Paris to Singapore. Now, I don't know if you've ever looked at a globe before, but this kid had a bicycle and he had made his way from Paris through the Alps, through the Balkans to get to Istanbul. Wow. Just that alone was cooler than anything I've ever done. And he was still going.
That's amazing.
He was doing Iran and Kazakhstan and Mongolia and China all the way through Vietnam to Singapore on a freaking bicycle. You know, I met a kid in somewhere in Latin America. I don't know where we met him. Bolivia or Peru or something. I don't know. But he had had some debilitating disease as a child. And he had been living in his house since he was like 3. And he was like 18 or 19 at this point. And he had started to recover. And he was on his first trip. And he was out and he was just getting drunk and doing drugs and trying to get laid as much as he could because he's like, I have been living in my house since I was 3. And now I am, you know, whatever the treatments have started to work. Something like that. Like his first trip was just to go out and, you know, hookers and blow as much as I can, have as much fun as I can. You know, the people you meet everywhere you go are doing something cool. That Japanese girl who was traveling through the Middle East by herself. You know, people who are driving from Cape to Cairo in a Jeep, or people who are, hell, you know, Buddy and Katie living in Taiwan, living in Morocco, you know, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Anywhere you go, there's someone doing something cooler than whatever you're doing. Nothing I've done is that cool. Nothing I've done is that off the reservation.
So we can definitely establish now that you're not that cool.
I'm absolutely not that cool. So it's hard to, it's hard. I've traveled a lot of places and I'll speak up a lot when people talk about traveling because I'm speaking from experience, but I don't think anything I've done is nearly as cool as any one of dozens of people I've met on the road.
So speaking of people that are cooler than us, you and I both have a love of Anthony Bourdain. And, you know, I had such a respect for the way that he documented the human condition. And he allowed us to reflect on the differences and similarities of people across the globe. And so I want to read something that he once said. And he said, I'm a big believer in winging it. I'm a big believer that you're never going to find a perfect city travel experience or the perfect meal without a constant willingness to experience a bad one. Letting the happy accident happen is what a lot of vacation itineraries miss. I think, and I'm always trying to push people to allow those things to happen rather to stick to some rigid itinerary. So in relation to that quote or something that he said, do you find yourself to be a big believer in winging it when you travel?
Yes. 100%, 1,000%, all of the percents. You know, like I said, I changed that trip to Iceland one year to 6 weeks in the Middle East, and it's one of my favorite trips I've ever done in my life. And, you know, I went to Latin America once. I had a ticket into Buenos Aires and a ticket out of Bogota. And how I got from one to the other was sort of 2 months of me making it up. There's nowhere I've ever been in my life that I regret going. I learned something, or I had a fun experience, or I met people that I'll always remember no matter where I went, no matter how crap it was. I wouldn't recommend you get on a third-class train in India, but it's my memory, I'm not one of those people that takes a lot of pictures of me somewhere, because I know what I look like. I'm, old and ugly. But I take the pictures for my memory so that I can look back and remember, like, that was a cool day. Like, that was a great day. And something crazy happened. And when the great things happen, it's never something that you planned. I've seen the Taj Mahal, and I've seen the pyramids, and I've seen Chichen Itza, and I've seen Machu Picchu, and I've been on Red Square during but I can see all of that in a book. That's not the cool stuff. The cool stuff is sneaking into the secret gardens next to the Taj Mahal, or seeing the pollution monitors of the Taj Mahal telling you that it's 10,000 times more polluted than it should be, and it's eating away at the marble, or random people you meet, whether other tourists and backpackers or locals. I sat and chatted with a guy in Damascus for a couple of nights, and just talking about his family and what happened. And I honestly, I still wonder about him. I sent him a package after I left, but then I don't know if he ever got it or anything like that. And the swimming with pink river dolphins in the Amazon was pretty cool. The guys on the boat are like, just get in. If the dolphins are here, they'll keep away the anacondas and the alligators. And you're like, well, fuck, I hope so. But it's all sort of last minute. I flew to the Galapagos once, and I didn't really have a plan because it's half the price, I guess, if you're doing Antarctica, by the way. This is what my cousin did. She and her husband were on their honeymoon. They just went to Ushuaia, and they gave themselves like a week or 10 days just to dick around. And if they found a boat in that period, and they got on a boat that has since sunk, I think I've seen pictures of it sunk. But anyway, they had a good time on it, and just got a cancellation. So I did the same. I flew to, what's that town in?
Ita?
No, the other one. Guayaquil. I flew to Guayaquil on the coast.
Guayaquil.
I slept in the airport. There's a locals plane to the Galapagos. Who knew? There's 20,000 people that live in the Galapagos full time. Who knew? So I found out. I got on a small little plane with people carrying TVs and ceiling fans and whatever else they were taking back to their houses in the Galapagos. Wandered around the town, found a cancellation on a boat. Took a cruise through the Galapagos and went scuba diving in a couple of days while we were waiting. And, I think everywhere I've been, it doesn't matter. I mean, if you have the right attitude, if you just sort of, it is what it is. What's the worst case scenario? You have some common sense. Like I said, easier for me than you. It's a real thing. I think when you're traveling and you've traveled a lot as a single traveler, I think, you have it a lot harder than I do. It's a lot easier for me. I am a short, goofy looking, I could pass for a local in any one of 100 countries. I don't stand out in a crowd. I'm not a target. It's easier for me. I've had the benefit of that rather than being like, imagine I was a 6'5" blonde guy wandering around India, I'm a huge target. So it's been easier for me, but just go. I mean, you'll never regret it. Have you ever regretted going anywhere? I don't think I have.
No. I mean, I could confidently say that there are trips that I have fonder memories of than other places, obviously, but regretted a trip? No, because even if it didn't turn out to be exactly what I thought it was going to be, I still experienced a new culture, learned something, tried some different food, met some amazing people. I've never been anywhere and been like, ugh, I hated everybody. I mean, besides like work, but
that's different. That's not a trip. That's work.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think your thing about Bourdain and the reason why so many people sort of loved his approach to things is just it's not. It really bums the shit out of me when you're traveling somewhere and someone's like, these people or those that, or I'm like, hey, who are you? I mean, there's nothing. There's nothing you do that's better than what these people do. But the experiences you have, he just used to go into shitty little places in the middle of nowhere and, suck the marrow out of it. And that's probably an overused expression, but I mean, shit, and that's the part that you loved about it. And he was so much cooler than we are. And he could pull stuff off. And that's why, I mean, he did what we aspire to do on a grander scale and with more panache. And, I think that's why I just love the way he did it. It's just go find something and enjoy it for whatever it is. And anywhere you travel, whether it's, I've been to 1,000 big cities. I'm not a giant big city person. I think when you go to some place like Guatemala, Antigua is quite a bit nicer than Guatemala City. And then there are some places, some places in Peru that are nicer than Lima. And there are a lot of places in Argentina nicer than Buenos Aires. And same thing for, London's pretty cool, I gotta admit, but I haven't heard wonderful things about Paris, but I'll get there one day when I'm old and feeble and can still do it. But there isn't any city in South Africa that's cooler than the bush. Same thing with India. And so I think a lot of it is, two things. One, just go. You'll never regret going anywhere.
Right.
And two, go with an open mind and look to enjoy it no matter what it is. Because I've gone to a lot of places, and I guess that gets back to the planning thing. I can be very organized. I mean, I know every airline that comes in and out of that airport, but I'd rather just show up. I'm still dying to do that one day. Just walk into an airport and find a flight that's leaving and buy the ticket. That would be cool.
Oh yeah, you and your wife, y'all should plan that for one of your birthdays. So
I know when we were working together, I'm sure everyone figured out I would end up with a school teacher from West Kansas. But she's I mean, you've met her. She's great. And,
she's amazing.
She has kind of, and kind of like my brother has traveled a lot. He's been to every state in the U.S. and he drives cross country once or twice a month working. And he met someone from Birmingham, and I met someone from, how's she from? Garden City, Kansas. And the cool thing is that they're both very like, oh, that sounds great. Let's go travel. So it's not like a thing. It's not like you need to be inculcated with this. It's, hey, we have an opportunity to travel, and you know what you're doing, so it's a little less scary for me, so let's go do it. So, we got married in Isla Mujeres in Mexico because I really didn't want to get married in a horse farm in Issaquah outside of Seattle or something. So, and then we just joined my brother and his wife. We rented a yacht for our honeymoon in Croatia, which was pretty cool. And it was her first trip. She'd been to Europe, but first trip doing something weird. And we flew to Istanbul, and Turkish Airlines fucked me because they're terrible. Anyway, I was stranded I could see the plane at the gate, and they told me I couldn't get on it. They're like, it's too late. I'm like, it's your connection. I bought the ticket from you. That is a Turkish Airlines flight. That is a Turkish Airlines plane. I'm supposed to be on that plane. Let me on the plane. Nope. You're not going to be able to get to Croatia till tomorrow. So we did a lot of screaming and yelling. And the wife is like, oh my God, what's going on? And I'm like, yeah, this happens all the time. So we got a free day to spend in Istanbul. So I've been to Istanbul.
I was about to say there are worse places to be stranded.
I've been to Istanbul before. So we're like, fuck it, let's go to Istanbul. So we took a taxi, we wandered around, we got to see the Blue Mosque, and we got to see Hagia Sophia and have some Turkish delight and wander through the bazaar in downtown, the giant Grand Bazaar in downtown Istanbul. So yeah, it was a shit show, but, she got to enjoy that sort of thing. And it's cool to share that with someone.
For sure. And do you ever feel, because you are the world traveler, do you ever feel pressure when people are like, hey, I trust you. You know what you're doing. You can plan the trip. I'll do whatever you want to do. You ever feel any pressure when they make you do that?
Nah, because I don't. I mean, we go back to I don't know. Let's just wing it. I mean, not wing it. Like, especially, I wouldn't do that with my wife and wouldn't do that with an 11-year-old, but say, hey, let's just go down there and we'll do a bunch of research and we'll know what's out there. And if we want to do something, we'll do it. But I'm not one who's going to book something to do can you imagine a fate worse than going somewhere where you have something booked every single day for 2 weeks and that's what you have to do. Fuck that. Nah, none of that sounds like fun to me. So even now, I would still do the same thing. You know, we travel around here. There's tons to see in the Northwest. It's cool. Like, we went to Portland.
Yeah.
We're going to Victoria. We're going to the wine country in Oregon. We did the beaches, and, you know, we went to the Goonies house. We met the guy who bought the Goonies house. He's from Kansas. We chatted with him.
No way!
So we went last weekend to Astoria, beautiful little town with lots of old Victorian houses. And we went, Eli wants to see the Goonies house. Very excited about the Goonies house. So we go and we walk up to the Goonies house, and he's wearing his Kansas jersey. Eli was born in Lawrence, so he's been a Kansas fan since day one. And there's a couple guys in the front yard milling around, working in the basement and stuff. One of them comes out, he's wearing a Chiefs jersey. He's like, Rock, Chalk, Jayhawk. And we started talking to him, and he was the guy who bought the Goonies house. He's from Overland Park, Kansas. His buddy bought the house next door.
That's awesome.
They're restoring it. His buddy lives in Seattle. So anyway, the Goonies house is in safe hands. Just wanted to let everyone know. A fan has bought it.
Thank goodness.
Fan has bought it and is cleaning it up. But yeah, and you know, even on trips like that, all the trips we do, it's basically just like, let's head that way. Let's do as much research. That's the thing. Don't head in blind. Don't be an idiot. But look up 100 things. And if you do 3 of them and have fun, that's great. But don't book 100 things, because you're guaranteed to be miserable. That's not, I couldn't do that. That's not my jam.
Oh my goodness. Well, I've always admired you. Don't tell anybody I said that. That would be preferable. But I have always admired you and how you travel. And you have I don't even want to say this. You have a humility about you that I don't think you realize that the things that you do and the places that you've been, like, they're really not normal. Like, I know how you said there are, everywhere you go, you meet somebody that's cooler than you. And I totally believe that. But in general, you do have some great stories. And I think you even downplay them sometimes. I'm like, Rob, that was amazing. And you're just like, yeah, I was, and then I had to run via Camelback and blah, blah. Like, the way and the pace at how you talk about stuff is my favorite thing. Like, I don't think you know that your stories are
I've been really, really lucky. In that nothing terrible has ever happened to me. And a lot of that's luck. It's absolutely nothing to do with my intelligence or skill. And B, I've loved it. I mean, I freaking love it. You know, there's nothing all I can do is say, go out and travel. You will love it. I mean, there's just everywhere you go, there's something cool, someone cool. And not even the cool places. I mean, you can go see all of the things. Shit, you can go to Paris and London and Rome. I've never been to Rome. I've never been to Paris.
Really?
I'm useless. I've never been to Barcelona. I'm a terrible traveler. But Barcelona, God, you got to talk like some douche who's been to Barcelona. It's like, they pronounce it Barcelona. Those are my favorite kind of travelers. I was like, yes, I know, but I'm not fucking Castilian. So I pronounce it Barcelona, for fuck's sake. But no, it's I've loved every minute of it, and it's part of the reason why I didn't settle down earlier, get a house earlier, start a family earlier, do all of those things, because I was just loving it all of the time. And I think, I mean, even unless you're an idiot, and I've met some idiots, and you know, for them, traveling might not be the best idea because they could get themselves in trouble. But you know, most of the people we would associate with are not quite the idiot kind. You'll never regret it. I mean, it's just, there's so much cool stuff out there and anywhere, just drive to Oregon, drive to Canada. You're in Georgia, go to do something weird like a civil rights trail in Alabama, or go and walk Charleston, or go to Appalachia. How cool would it be? And I've never done it. I mean, I've been to West Virginia, but just go and spend like a couple weeks running through like the Hatfields and the McCoys country in eastern Kentucky and West Virginia. Something weird like that. Just everywhere you go, there's something cool to see. You don't have to, you know, be a world traveler or be the smartest kid in the block or have a ton of money, but It's fun. It's I live in the suburb. I live in the suburbs now. It's fun for me. I commute.
I know. I've been to your house.
I commute an hour and a half each way every day to get into a job where we build houses and for rich people in a big city. But in any direction you go from here, you can go to someplace cool. I can see Mount Rainier from here. I can go down to the fire lookouts, go out to the mountains, go to the Indian reservations, which is pretty cool up here. There's people always, well, not always, but sometimes people ask, like, where would you go? It doesn't matter. Go anywhere. That, first little trip. And I think you and I have met a lot of, we were old. We are old now, but we were also old back in the day when we were at, bartending, and we were me older than you.
Yeah.
And the young kids would come into the bar and they were like 18, 19, 20, 21, never traveled anywhere. And you're like, just go. It doesn't matter where you go. Just do it. Throw a backpack on and head in that direction. Keep going till you hit a wall and then turn. And then eventually get home.
Yeah.
Because, people ask, oh, what are your hobbies? What do you do? I mean, I'm not like a lifelong skier or a lifelong surfer or a lifelong diver or anything. I just travel. That's the fun stuff. Always has been.
No, that sounds awesome. And I admire you greatly for everything and all the places that you have been. And so to kind of end this on a lighter note, I do want to ask you more of a superficial question. So whenever you travel, is there something in particular that you would recommend for somebody else that, like, hey, this has helped me out? Like something you pack or something you don't leave for a trip without? Do you have a go-to that you don't leave for a trip without it?
No, because I have traveled for months at a time with a carry-on bag. So that would be my recommendation, is pack all your shit and then get rid of half of it and repack all your shit and make sure you can do it with a carry-on bag. Because life is too short to lose luggage and to fight with airlines and to be in luggage carousels. And you're going to be... Actually, that's the second thing. The first thing is always take a crap when you can. It's very, very important. Seriously, these are things that'll save your life one day. One, always take a crap when you can, because you never know when you're... The last thing you want to do is stuck in a third world country or in a museum line or anywhere when you need to go to the bathroom and you don't... There's no toilet paper, or there's no toilet anywhere. Anyway, most importantly, always take a crap when you can. Secondly, pack all your bags. Get rid of half the shit you're going to take with you. Take a carry-on bag. You know what's fun is like being on a bus when your bag is strapped to the top at the very back and you have to stay awake for 17 hours so that someone doesn't steal your bag while it's strapped to the top at one of the 57 stops between here and the coast. So if your bag fits in your lap or if your bag fits under your seat... Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I spent 6 weeks in the Middle East with a freaking backpack. I've still got it. It's like yay big. That's the thing. You don't need what you think you need. These days, shit, I used to have to carry, remember all that film and stuff we used to have to carry and cameras? Now you got a phone. You need a phone and a charger. You can wash your socks in the sink. You can wash your undies in the sink. There's laundromats that cost $1.50 to do a load of laundry. Don't take stuff. Shit, I promise you don't need your stuff. And if you get stuck spending a day wandering around Istanbul, you'll just have a carry-on bag and you won't be hauling your suitcase up and down the hills. So the only thing, and honestly, if my wife is a work in progress, I have never seen anyone take that much shit with them on a trip, but we're working on it. We're working on it. But if there is one thing I could tell you when you travel, it's that you do not need all the crap that you think you need. Take a carry-on bag, take a large carry-on bag, and it makes life easier when you're traveling. I guess that's the only thing. I don't think I have anything that I travel with.
That's great advice, actually. And I follow that advice quite often. I'm a very light packer. It just makes life easier. You don't have to worry as much. Your back doesn't hurt as much. It's just, overall, it's a good choice, for sure. So, thank you for taking all of this time. I know I took up an hour and 15 minutes of your time and you have a family and you have a kid. But isn't it kind of fun to like sit down and talk about
reliving
travel?
the glory days? We're still going.
Yeah.
Just, you get old and you get a kid. I'm still hoping to go to France for the Rugby World Cup at the end of the year. Still hoping the wife still wants to go places. So just because you get old and married and housed and stuff, you don't have to stop. You just go to less shady places.
Yeah. Oh, man. This was fun. And I loved your stories. You're a great storyteller. You're still kind of funny. Like, you have your moments.
Funny looking, funny sounding.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. Hopefully all the rest of your people aren't scared off for all of the other guests that have something useful to contribute.
I think at least 7 of our friends will listen to this and really like it.
I will be world famous within Fulton County, Cobb County, DeKalb County general area.
Yeah, exactly. At least 3 from DeKalb County. So, but it was great talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
I will talk to you soon. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
We remind you that this is a non-smoking flight. Smoking is prohibited on the entire aircraft, including the lavatories. Tampering with, disabling, or destroying the lavatory smoke detectors is prohibited by law. If you have any questions about our flight today, please don't hesitate to ask one of our flight attendants.